onto the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do not divide. We also know that the word itself, community, it has the word unity inside it. And what is a community? A community is where everybody feels a sense of belonging. No one feels that they are left out. No one feels ostracized. No one feels that they are not included in the community. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, established such a community whereby he had amongst his close gathering Bilal al-Habashi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. He was from Abyssinia. Then we have Suhaib al-Rumi radiyallahu ta'ala, who was from the Roman Empire. And then we also have the famous Salman al-Farsi, who was from the Persian Empire. And all of these people gathered together around the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, and they all felt a sense of unity and togetherness amongst themselves. In fact, there is a report where someone from the Arab tribes came in the presence of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he saw it. He saw someone from Abyssinia, Bilal radiallahu anhu. He saw the Caucasian Suhaib al-Rumi, and he saw the Persian, and he was taken aback. And there was a change in his face, the way he looked at what the Prophet ﷺ did. And he questioned the Prophet ﷺ, we are Arabs, we have honor, we are prestigious. How can there be these kind of people in your assembly if you are considered a leader? So the Prophet ﷺ was disturbed by these remarks. And what he said is, your Lord is one, and we all come from one forefather, and that is Adam and Eve, Adam and Hawa alayhimus salatu wassalam. So again, what I'm emphasizing here is the concept of togetherness and the concept of unity. The Prophet ﷺ describes the Muslim ummah, and he says, Kal bunyan. The Muslim community is like a firm structure. Yashuddu ba'duhu ba'da. One part of the structure, it strengthens another part. So one believer is the support for another. One part of the community supports another. Now when it comes to difference of opinion, and we see this ikhtilaf al-ra'i, we see these various opinions according to the jurisprudence, and we see some people performing prayer in a certain way and others performing in another way. We see some people starting the month of Ramadan on a particular date and others starting on another date. We see certain opinions come forward where something seems to be allowed, and in others it seemed to be something that we should abstain from. So it feels as if these various opinions actually are disturbing the unity and the togetherness. So the reality of the matter is that we have to understand all of this from a particular perspective. And the first thing that I want to share is that there are things considered usul, and there are certain things considered furu'. What this basically means is there are foundational matters and there are subsidiary matters. The foundational matters we can never differ in. Let me give you a few examples. Allah is one. Can there ever be a difference of opinion in this matter? Every Muslim, every true believer will declare and say that Allah is one, knowing that we have to perform salah 5 times a day. There will never be a difference of opinion in this matter. And swine, pig being forbidden for consumption, this is agreed upon. There's no difference of opinion in this, because this is all from the usul. This is all from the foundational matters that are clearly described in the Holy Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Where we generally find difference of opinion is in regards to matters that we consider branches or subsidiary matters.
So do we have to raise our hand before we go into ruku or when we come back from ruku? This is a subsidiary matter. The Prophet ﷺ, he did both according to various narrations. What the jurists amongst themselves get into the detail and discussion of is that they say which one is preferred, which one is the better way of doing things, because you can't do both at the same time. So that's where they have their understanding, they have their deeper fiqh, and they give the reasonings as to why each jurist or each school of jurisprudence, they give preference to one over the other, and all are correct. We cannot say that there's only one that is correct. So again, what we need to understand is that in foundational matters, there will never be difference of opinion. The difference of opinion is only in subsidiary matters, and this is not something to become enemy over. This is not something to hate one another for. Rather, this actually makes things more diverse. You know, we are all here. Every one of us is wearing something different. Imagine we wore the exact same thing, all of us. It would seem boring. We all like the same dish. It would be boring. We all like the same car, the same vehicle. It would be really mundane. And if everybody liked the same thing and did the same thing, there would be no real excitement or variance or diversity. So there is diversity, and that makes things better. And when we look at the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and these subsidiary matters, the Prophet ﷺ often did these few things in a different manner so that he can bring that diversity in the context of each community and each society. Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he makes a mention about fasting in the month of Ramadan. He said, when we were traveling with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the month of Ramadan, some of us fasted and others did not fast. And neither group looked down on the other. The group that was fasting in the month of Ramadan fast are fard. We have to fast. But when we're in journey, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. When we are in journey, we can have the option to not fast. So the Prophet ﷺ is with the companions. Some of the companions, they are fasting while they're in this journey, and others were not. They didn't disrespect each other in their opinion or in their view as to who was fasting and who was not fasting. They respected the diversity, they respected each other, and that again shows even in diversity there can be unity and there can be togetherness. We also find Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. We're talking about the month of Ramadan, another example of Ramadan. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he was based in Syria. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he was based in Madinatul Munawwara. The month of Ramadan concluded in Syria on the 29th day, because the people in Syria, under the leadership of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, they verified the moon sighting. But in Medina, there was no determination or verification for a moon sighting, and therefore, how many days of Ramadan did they conclude? 30 days. So they did the Eid celebrations on different days. And again, this was respected. This was honored. This was not looked down upon. There's a very famous narration about the Prophet ﷺ sending a group of companions towards the Banu Qurayza. And the Prophet ﷺ told these companions that you should offer your Asr prayer when you reach that locality. So the companions radiallahu anhum, they set trek and they went towards the locality. Asr time now was about to expire. Now the Sahaba, they got into two groups. One group said, the Prophet ﷺ probably assumed that we're going to reach there and therefore Asr time will still be there, so we should perform Asr when we get there. But the time of Asr is about to expire, so we should perform it now. The other group said, no, the Prophet ﷺ gave us emphatic instructions, very clear and vivid instructions. You must perform. The words that were used is لَيُصَلِّيَنَّ. You must perform Asr prayer when you reach there. So they had this difference of opinion. One group of the Sahaba, they performed their Asr there, and the other, they let the time expire and they performed when they reached the locality. After all of this, they came back to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, did not look down upon either of the groups. He clarified, he said, why did you perform your Asr en route when I gave you these instructions? They said, we assumed that you would have this understanding that we would reach there. So the Prophet ﷺ said, it's correct. And then he asked, why didn't you perform your Asr even though the time was expiring? They said, we heard your clear instructions and injunctions, and we didn't want to disobey your clear words, and therefore we performed Asr when we reached in the locality. So again, what we're seeing here is difference of opinion, but it's being honored, it's being respected, it's being looked upon as not something to divide and not something to cause disunity upon. So generally at the beginning of Ramadan, you have this variance. In Canada, in different parts of the world, some people begin Ramadan, some people don't begin Ramadan. There are different ways to determine the beginning of the month. It could be through local sighting of the moon. It could be through a particular region of sighting, for example, North America. And then there are other groups who follow Saudi Arabia. There are others who follow international sighting or global sighting. Wherever it's sighted in the entire world, they start the month. And there are others who determine based on hisab and based on calculations. So all of these methods are acceptable. The true question for us is, which of these views will bring uniformity in our communities? Which of these views will bring a greater sense of unity? That would be something that the leaders, and they are working towards this, Inshā'Allāh, in the various communities. You have a difference of opinion about the times of suhoor. There are some who start at the 15 degrees mark. There are others who start at the 18 degrees mark. And in Toronto, we have an opinion of 12 degrees as well. So again, various opinions, but they must be, again, respected. Again, there's valid fiqh, there's valid jurisprudence that facilitates these various opinions. Now, what we need to understand is, despite the diversity, how to maintain that unity, how to maintain that togetherness. Firstly is we should never make it a personal matter. If someone is doing something in a way that we might not find acceptable, but it's in the framework of the deen, it's in the framework of Islam, then we should not take it personal. It's nothing against me. It's their understanding. If they're opposing, or if another community or another group is following a different fiqh or a different view through the jurisprudence of Islam, then we should not take it personal. Rather, we should respect it. And it shouldn't be taken personal. We shouldn't have grudges or hatred amongst ourselves because of these views that may not be a preferred view for us or an acceptable view for us. We see the example, Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he had a major difference of opinion with Talha bin Ubaidullah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And this was at the occasion of the campaign of Jamal. And it was a huge difference of opinion. It led into almost a warfare amongst the Sahaba. And there was a very difficult situation. They were in different camps. Ali radiallahu anhu was on one side, and Talha bin Ubaidullah radiallahu anhu was on another side. They were both great companions. But Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he would make dua for Talha bin Ubaidullah radiallahu anhu. And he would praise Talha bin Ubaidullah radiallahu, even though they had major difference of opinion. So what we learn from this is that they didn't make it a personal matter. Rather, they knew it was based on ijtihad. It was based on legitimate jurisprudence that a person is trying to attain the true understanding of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that particular circumstance. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu and Umar radiallahu anhu, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, they butted heads. They had difference of opinion on more than 100 rulings, more than 100 masail. They had difference of opinion. The Hanafi fiqh is based on the understanding of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu and the narrations that are reported from him. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, he had these difference of opinions with Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, but they still acknowledged one another. They still honored one another. And when someone would ask them, what do you think about Abdullah ibn Mas'ud? If someone came to Umar and asked, what do you think of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu? Or vice versa, someone came to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and asked, what are your opinions about Umar ibn al-Khattab? They would always praise. And they would say, they are a pillar of Islam. They have knowledge and deep understanding of Islam. Even though we differ in certain matters, but we still acknowledge their knowledge, their leadership, and their great position. So we should never make it a personal issue. Rather, we should leave it to the matter of ijtihad and legitimate jurisprudence. Number two is, many a times, because we are ignorant, we don't know that a valid opinion does exist in another fiqh, from another angle, because we are not aware of this. Maybe we are constantly in a group that always follows a certain fiqh, that always follows a certain position. And because of that, when we are exposed to another opinion, we're not aware of it. And we find it strange. We find it strange. So if Hanafis always stay with the Hanafis, then when they see a practice amongst the Shafi'is, they're going to find it very astonishing. One of the community members that comes to my masjid, when he first went to Umrah, he said, oh wow, these people are performing salah slightly different. They take so long in their sitting after they get from the sujood up. They take so long. Isn't that something wrong in the way we pray? So because he was ignorant about a ruling, the Prophet ﷺ actually encouraged itminan. We're supposed to do our prayer very calmly. We're supposed to take our time. We're not supposed to go up, down, kiss the ground, and back to town, as they say. We're supposed to do things slowly and calmly. So when I explained this to him, he realized, oh, this is actually a teaching of Islam. So again, sometimes we are ignorant. We don't have the knowledge. So that's why Allah says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That if you don't know, ask the people of knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge, ask the people of knowledge. And this is why we should constantly learn from our teachers and our ulama and the jurists how to understand our religion and what to know and how different opinions do exist. And again, this should not be a matter of hatred or disunity or disregard to one another. And the third point that I want to make is that sometimes the jurists, the ulama, the scholars, they say, for a higher objective, we have to be a little bit flexible. For a higher purpose, we have to be flexible. There's an example from the life of Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah. Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah, we know that there's an entire school of jurisprudence, a madhab, a school of jurisprudence, a school of thought based on the fiqh of Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah. And when he went to the masjid where Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, used to occupy, and he went in this masjid and he led prayer, he forwent his personal opinion. His opinion is, before you start reciting any surah, the Bismillah is part of the surah. So when the Imam says Allahu Akbar, he says Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. He's reciting the Bismillah audibly, because according to the Shafi'i fiqh, the Bismillah is part of the surah. It should be audible. But according to the Hanafi fiqh, it's not part of the surah. It's part of the Quran, but it's not part of the surah. So that's why the Hanafis, they recite the Bismillah silently, not audibly. But Imam al-Shafi'i, he went to the community of the Hanafis in the masjid where Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was occupying. And he led the prayer, and he did not practice his personal opinion. Why? He did not want to disturb things. If he said Bismillah loudly, and the people who had learned from their Imam Abu Hanifa, it would cause chaos. That our Imam taught us that Bismillah is supposed to be recited silently, and here comes someone reciting it loudly. People may not have the proper knowledge. It might cause chaos. So Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, for a higher objective, he let go of a particular furu'i matter, a subsidiary matter, not a fundamental or a foundational matter, a subsidiary matter, so that this higher objective of reducing any chaos or any misunderstanding or disrespect to the local Imam, he did not recite the Bismillah audibly. And similarly, he didn't raise his hands. His opinion is you're supposed to do raf'ul yadayn. You're supposed to raise your hands when you get into the different postures in the salah. But for the Hanafi fiqh, you only raise your hands right at the beginning for tahrima, and then you don't raise your hands. So here what we're seeing is, for a higher objective, another opinion is being followed. So a lot of people, in regards to the moon sighting, they say, isn't the sunnah, the essence of the sunnah is to follow local sighting? To follow in our own city, we look for the moon, and then we either start Ramadan or we end Ramadan. But what's happening is that there's diverse communities in Canada, and there's different opinions that are followed. And we're living in a schedule-based society. And a lot of the masajid and a lot of the organizations, they either follow Saudi Arabia or they follow calculations, the Fiqh Council of North America. So they're not practicing the essence of the sunnah, in the sense that they're not locally looking for the moon, even though that's the better way to do it. But for a higher objective, to get more unity and togetherness and uniformity in the day we start Ramadan, in the day we start Eid, many masajid, they have taken the weaker opinion, and they're not doing local sighting. They're following the Fiqh Council of North America to determine the beginning of the month. So this is an example of how we are being flexible in some of the organizations here for a higher objective, and that higher objective is to create a sense of more uniformity, especially on our festivals and celebrations. So to conclude, we want to understand that Islam is vast. And as one of my teachers would say, Sheikh Abdullah Kapodrawi, rahimahullah, he would say that the more a person knows, the more a person has knowledge of the deen, the more a person dives into the fiqh and the jurisprudence, the more their minds were broadened. The less a person knows, the more rigid they'll be, the more tight they'll be, because they don't have the knowledge of the various opinions. So we need to understand that Islam is broad, it's vast. As long as we stay in the framework, we can never get out of the framework of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. If we stay within this framework, according to our different madhahib and the jurists that we follow, Inshā'Allāh, we are safe. And your imams, your scholars, your jurists, your ulama in your communities, they come together often to try and bring these type of discussions alive, and to create a sense of uniformity and unity as well. They say 2 Muslims are better than 1. 2 Muslims are better than 1 when they are one. When they are one. Another saying is, whenever you find 2 Muslims, there will be 3 opinions. Right? So yes, there's various opinions, but again, the jurists, they look out for what is best for each community. So I'll conclude with a simple example. A father was passing away. An elderly man was passing away. He called all his many children. And what he did is he gave them a rope. And he said, try and tear the rope. So he's dying and he's giving them the rope, and they're all trying to pull it, but they can't tear it. Then he took the rope and he took out 1 thread and he gave to each one of his sons and daughters. He said, now try and tear the rope or the thread. and it quickly snapped. So he said, I'm leaving you with a message. This message is, I'm passing away. I did my part to try and keep the family united and together. And to some degree it was there. But now I'm passing away. I'm advising you to stay together. And the way you're going to stay together in unity and uniformity is that you stay together and support one another, respect one another, be kind to one another. If you're going to segregate and you're going to go on your own way and you're not going to spread the love amongst your siblings and amongst yourselves, then you're going to divide and it's going to become a difficult circumstance and a situation. So to conclude, the final message I have is, even though there may be diversity of opinions, as Shawqi, the famous Arab poet, said, that hearts can not differ. The views can differ, but hearts can never differ. So there will be difference of opinion, but in our hearts we respect every Muslim, every believer. And we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to understand the true message of Islam in this blessed month of Ramadan. May Allah allow us to respect diversity of opinion. May Allah allow us to dive deep into fiqh and jurisprudence and learn the teachings of Islam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the best of success in this world and the hereafter. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah khairan for that very beneficial and informative talk. May Allah allow us to implement every bit of knowledge that He passed down on us. Inshallah. Also, I just want to remind you guys that these lectures are being live streamed, so if you guys wanted to share the link with your friends and family who can watch from home or anywhere, then Inshā'Allāh it's in the Saskatoon Dawah Center WhatsApp group chat. So moving forward, our next esteemed guest is a leading scholar in the UK. He's the founder of Darul Ilm and Darul Iftah in Birmingham, and also has mastered Islamic sciences, and he is a law graduate from Birmingham City University. Countless students continue to benefit from his mentorship and teachings. He travels around the world for presentations and lectures to impart the sacred knowledge. So with that, I would like to welcome our respected guest, Sheikh Tosir, inshallah.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Ashrafil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah, it is a great honor and privilege to have been invited by the masjid and also by Sheikh Yusuf and by Sheikh Altaf. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes this afternoon's program successful, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He rewards all the brothers and sisters who assisted in organizing this event. Ameen thumma ameen. Today's lecture has been entitled, or the title which I have been given to talk about is regarding the fiqh of fasting. Now, we won't be able to look at this topic in a workshop stroke seminar format, because for that you perhaps need presentations, you perhaps need handouts, but we will talk about the importance of fasting, why we fast, and then at the end, Inshā'Allāh ta'ala, we will go over some of the major rules of fasting, some of the do's and the don'ts of fasting, things which breaks the fast and things which does not break the fast. And if I have time at the end, I will say a few things about i'tikaf, which is one of the most of a very important sunnah, especially in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Now, before I delve into today's topic, I'll begin by encouraging everyone to not only learn about their deen and acquire ilm and knowledge, but to have understanding of their deen. Remember, we are not required to acquire knowledge. We are required to have tafaqquh and understanding of deen. It is mentioned in a hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, "May yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqqihhu fi din." So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good from you, He will give you understanding of deen. The hadith doesn't say if Allah wants good, He will give you the theory of deen, or He will give you the knowledge of deen. But in fact, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said is, He will give you true understanding of deen. Because let's be honest, the knowledge of deen and the sharia is out there. It's out there, isn't it? There's like so much information about our deen on your fingertips. There's thousands and thousands of ahadith, so many different translations and commentaries available of a verse, not of the entire Quran, just of a single verse. You can find many commentaries which have been written. And as Sheikh Yusuf was saying just before me, that there is so much knowledge out there, but that in itself is the obstacle, because when there's so much, people then have more differences and it gets more confusing for everyone. And the reason why all the differences are happening, whether it's got to do with moon sighting, whether it's got to do with the way people pray salah, is because people then have not dissected the knowledge and have not understood what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to portray from this particular message. So what I want to say to all the brothers who are here and sisters who may be listening is that don't just acquire knowledge, because that is the easiest part. Make sure you have true understanding of the deen. Which then nicely takes me on to a very famous hadith which can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave an example of the one who acquires knowledge and understands it over the one who just acquires knowledge. And just very briefly, without taking too much time, the hadith of Bukhari explains that think of knowledge to be like rain. Rain which has fallen on a fertile ground, on fertile land. The fertile land then absorbs the rain, and after a while it starts growing grass and different other types of vegetation. Thereafterwards you have another type of land where the rain is not absorbing that land, But these lands are like holes or ditches, where the ditches are holding the rain, so that other people and animals can then take the rainwater. And in this way, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has explained to us the importance of understanding Deen and not understanding Deen. The first example I gave is of someone who's understood Deen. Because when he understands Deen, that's him absorbing the rain, meaning absorbing the ilm. And when he understands it and he's absorbed it, then he's able to benefit others. And that is the parable of grass and vegetation growing. So do you know, when people who understand Deen, they can then inspire another generation of people. People then want to learn from them. People want to be like them. People take you as a role model. But those who say, for example, take the knowledge, but they haven't absorbed it, and it's like ditches of water. Yes, others can benefit from you, but you are not going to be very proficient, or say, for example, you are not going to be benefiting many people. Why? Because you yourself have not understood the ilm and the knowledge. So keeping these 2 points in mind, we like to obviously, inshallah, encourage all the brothers who are here, sisters who are here, that do acquire ilm and knowledge, and make sure that you have the true understanding of Deen. Now, the topic which I'm going to be looking at today is regarding the fiqh of fasting. And there is no better place to start this topic than the verse of the Holy Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. O those who believe, fasting has been prescribed upon you the same way it has been prescribed upon those before you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you can achieve taqwa and piety. Now this ayah tells us 2 things. Number 1, it tells us that fasting was also fard and obligatory upon the nations and the religions and the ummah before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So fasting isn't unique for Muslims. All nations, all religions before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's advent all fasted. Even before Ramadan fast became fard, there were certain days which was fard for the Muslims to fast. So fasting isn't a unique worship and ibadah. It started from Adam alayhi salatu wassalam's time. It is mentioned in a narration that when Adam alayhi salatu wassalam came to this world, after he had eaten from the tree which he was prohibited from doing so, he then fasted 40 days. He then fasted 40 days. We read in the Holy Quran when Allah instructed Musa alayhi salatu wassalam to climb on Mount Dhuhr and receive the revelation of the Torah. So he was originally instructed to fast 30 days. He fasted the 30 days, but then what Musa ﷺ did was, he quickly did miswak to remove the odor of the fasting person. So he did miswak, and then he went to meet Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him that I don't want to meet you in this state. Why did you do miswak for? Because we are aware of the hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, La khalufu fami as-sa'im atyabu 'inda Allah min rihil misk. The odor of the fasting person's mouth is more sweeter in the eyes of Allah than the smell or the fragrance of musk. So Allah then tells Musa ﷺ, go back, do another 10 days of fasts. Do another 10 days of fast, do 40 days, and then come, and then I'll give you the Torah. So the point I'm trying to make is that prophets in the past also fasted as well. Nations in the past have also fasted as well. So why do we then fast? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says beautifully in a couple of words, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that we have been made, or it has been made obligatory to fast so that we can achieve taqwa and piety. What is piety? What is taqwa? Taqwa, in essence, brothers and sisters, is to stay away from sins, is to stay away from evil. The name of the game is فَمَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ, is to make sure that the scales in the hereafter, our good deeds outweighs the bad deeds, and we will enter Jannah. But those whose scales are light, وَمَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ خَسِرُوا أَنفُسَهُمْ فِي جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدُونَ, then they will remain and go and enter Jahannam, and they will remain there forever. So taqwa in essence is to stay away from sins. And as I said before, that is the name of the game. We have to lead our life in this world for however many years, 50, 60, 70 years, and we just have to make sure that we do more good deeds over bad deeds. Now, in theory, it should be easy. In theory, it should be easy. What I mean by that is, we have so many opportunities to do good deeds. And what is so beautiful is, one good deed automatically means 10 good deeds. So even if you just recited one letter of the Quran for argument's sake, you're getting 10 rewards. And also at the same time, when you do a sin and a guna and a bad, only one evil is being written down. So in theory, let's be honest, doing good deeds and leading your life doing good should be easy, shouldn't it? Like, yes, I know we may commit sins here and there, but even if we committed 5 sins a day, it's just 5 sins. But if we just recited Surah Al-Fatiha, and with one letter we're getting 10 rewards, just reciting Surah Al-Fatiha or just praying a salah, that will overwhelmingly, how should I say, crush the 5 sins which we committed. So in essence, to achieve taqwa and to do good deeds should be easy, but in reality it isn't. And the reason why I'm saying in reality it isn't is because sin is something which is very detrimental. It's like an addiction. One sin leads to another sin. And the second sin leads to 3, 4 more sins. And every time what happens is that the sin you do, it gets even more daring and even more worse and even more evil than the sins which you did before. To the extent that it so happens that when you can't control your sins, your entire life ends up as sin. Every day you do sins. Every day. And when it comes to doing good deeds, good actions, you don't even have the zeal or the jazba or the shauq or the enthusiasm to do any good deeds. And again, without being judgmental, I'm sure we know many brothers and sisters who perhaps once upon a time in their life may have been practicing, may have been coming to the masjid regularly. But what happened was that either they started hanging around with bad people, or they tried out certain drugs, they took some drugs, then the next thing you know, one drug went to another, to the extent that they are now addicted to drugs. Perhaps they were good people before, but they hanged around with bad people. They went somewhere, they drank a bit of alcohol, and then the next thing you know, that they are now addicted to alcohol. So the point I'm trying to make is that sins, when you get into it, you can't get out of it. And then your entire day is spent in sinning. And even when the month of Ramadan comes, and people are there, telling you, you should fast, you should come to the masjid, you don't have that vigor to even come to the masjid. You don't forget that, you don't even have a vigor to fast. You don't even have vigor to even pray or do anything good, no matter what it may be. So this is why we fast, brothers and sisters, is to kind of make sure that we attain taqwa and piety. So this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, oh brothers, oh sisters, oh believers, fast so that you can achieve taqwa and piety. Like many of the obligations of our deen, many of our obligations had or has had a number of changes to the obligation which we see now. If you take an example of salah, you were actually allowed at the very beginning to talk in salah. So you could actually pray, Allahu Akbar, and you could have a conversation with the person next to you. But then later on, excessive actions in salah, talking in salah, became abrogated and cancelled, and we have salah the way it is now. تحريمها التكبير وتحليلها التسليم. The moment you say takbir tahrima, then eating, drinking, talking, speaking, looking around, excessive movements becomes unlawful. It is mentioned in the hadith of Sunan Abu Dawud that there were also 3 changes in fasting as well. Fasting has had 3 kind of alterations. Firstly, when fasting became fard, when fasting became fard, the Muslims were obliged to keep two types of fasts. They were, number one, the fast of Ashura, known as the 10th of Muharram fast. And the Muslims were also obliged to fast thalathatu ayyam min kulli shahr, 3 days every month. So these were the two fasts which were obligatory upon the Muslims. Then in the second year of migration, the fast of Ramadan then became obligatory, and the two fasts which I mentioned, i.e. day of Ashura fast and 3 days every month, then became abrogated. Thereafterwards, when the fasting started, there was another rule, which was that the moment you fall asleep at night, the period of fasting started. So in other words, if you fell asleep at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., that's it. Fasting period starts. So there was an incident of a very famous Sahabi whose name was Qais bin Sirma. So what happened was that he was fasting. He was actually a farmer, so he was fasting. He was working all day. He went home. His wife had not cooked anything for him for iftar. So she went to kind of get some food for him. In the meantime, Qais bin Sirma, because he was tired all day working, he went to sleep. And the rule was, the moment you go to sleep at night, fasting period starts. So the next day he woke up and he had to go out to work on the fields. And he hadn't eaten for 2 days. And due to the overwhelming tiredness and difficulty, he then collapsed to the floor. So when Rasulullah found out, the verse was revealed, "Kulu washrabu hatta yatabayyana lakum al-khayt al-abyad min al-khayt al-aswad min al-fajr." Which means, in other words, eat, drink until the white thread becomes clear from the black thread, i.e. Fajr, Subh Sadiq, i.e. dawn time. So in other words, this ayat in a way has allowed the Muslim Ummah to eat, drink all night, all day, and that when it's Subh Sadiq, i.e. in other words dawn time, that's when you have to then stop eating, drinking, and that's when the fasting period will start. So these were some changes which happened in fasts. As I was saying before, that it will be difficult for us to look at all the rules of fasting, but I'll mention a few, Inshā'Allāh. We'll whiz through a few, and then obviously there will be a Q&A as well afterwards. So if anything was not covered, Inshā'Allāh, we could all discuss it during the Q&A afterwards. Now, some of the things which breaks the fast, some of the don'ts of fasting. So number one is eating or drinking. So the straightforward ones, eating, drinking, they break the fast. Taking medication, taking medicine, that will also break the fast as well. Now, under the topic of medication, so we can understand logically that whether the medication is liquid-based medication, liquid form medication, whether it is solid, like in the form of paracetamol tablets. But how about things such as inhalers? Do inhalers break the fast or not? Now, this is something which you will find some differing opinions. Some scholars of the opinion that inhalers does not break the fast. Why? Because when you inhale the air or the chemicals, what you're inhaling is not going down into your stomach, because it has to be something which benefits your stomach or your brain, which invalidates the fast. So some scholars say that when you're inhaling, it's actually benefiting your lungs. But other scholars, the majority of the scholars, and tell the truth, there is more precaution in this, is that we say that inhalers break the fast. Because when you breathe something in and it goes down, we are not sure whether it's only reaching the lungs or not. So therefore, inhalers will break the fast. Likewise, to inhale smoke, or anything which has a body, intentionally will break the fast. So if somebody had been smoking outside and you could actually see the smoke, the body of the smoke, so somebody went near to that smoke and intentionally inhaled it, then the fast will break. But let me make it clear, brothers and sisters, the key word here is intentionally inhaling. Sometimes it could happen that the smoke, unintentionally may enter through your mouth and enter through your nose. Especially, like fumes from a fire, fumes from a lorry or a car. So if you are waiting outside, the fumes, without you doing anything, it subconsciously, unintentionally may enter into your body. So if that happens, that does not break your fast, because that was done unintentionally. But if it was done intentionally, then that will break your fast. Other rules such as vomiting, so to intentionally vomit a mouthful, that will break your fast as well. Things which does not break the fast. So number one is eating or drinking unintentionally. Sometimes it happens in forgetfully. You didn't realize that you were fasting, so you just sipped a water from a bottle, which can happen. So to kind of eat or drink forgetfully, that doesn't break your fast. Likewise, ear drops, eye drops, wearing contact lenses. These things does not break your fast. Using nicotine patches, applying creams on your face, using deodorants, perfumes. Now again, with perfumes, some may be thinking, well, isn't that like a smell? And we just mentioned that you shouldn't intentionally inhale the smell. Now the thing with deodorants is that it doesn't have a mist like say smoke does. You know when you use the deodorant, you just put it onto your body or your clothes, there isn't a mist. Now yes, if the deodorant was such that it had lots of mist and it's a body, and then you intentionally smell it, then yes, that can break your fast. But because in deodorants, in perfumes, the mist evaporates and only the smell remains on your clothes and your body, so that does not break your fast. Likewise, taking out blood does not break your fast. Some scholars like Imam Ahmad is of the opinion that it does, but the majority of the scholars are of the opinion that taking out blood does not break your fast. And likewise, injections as well does not break the fast. And it's a good question because a lot of people ask this about injections. Now with regards to injections, as I was saying right at the beginning, that two things will break the fast. One is if what is being inserted into your body reaches your belly, or number two is reaching your brains. And it has to reach your belly or your brain directly. So it can't be indirectly. It has to be like directly. So in other words, when you eat something, when you eat, goes down your throat, it's going straight into your belly. Fast breaks. Any other medicine. So whether you kind of like swallowing it, or if it's like nasal spray, nasal medicine, where it's kind of reaching all the way directly to the brain, fast will break. Now with regards to injections, what happens is, there is no doubt the patient or the person is benefiting, but it's not directly going into his belly or his stomach, and it's not directly going to his brain. Because when somebody is using injections, the contents of the injections is dissipating into the bloodstream, and then through a different means or externally, not directly, indirectly, it's then reaching the belly, yes, the brains and other parts of the body. So what I want to say is that injections don't break the fast. That is like what the modern day research and tahqiq is on this particular topic. So these are just a few do's and don'ts of what breaks fast, what does not break the fast. Right at the end, I'll just say a few things about i'tikaf. Because I think normally when fiqh fasting topics happen, I think the members of the audience, they always go through the fasting side. But then there is another important sunnah, which is i'tikaf, which a lot of people want to do, but perhaps don't know how to do it. And because they don't know how to do it, they never get the opportunity to do it. Now, alhamdulillah, I think COVID was a not so great moment for mankind, to tell the truth, and also for the Muslim Ummah as well. I'm sure many of us have lost loved ones during the COVID period. Many great shuyukh, ulama, all across the world have passed away. But through every shar, it's a hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari as well, of Huzayfah bin Yaman radiallahu anhu, through every shar or evil, sometimes there may be some khair and good which comes out. And I think one of the goods to come out from the COVID period is, I think people are a bit more now accepting of online related things, online education, online studies. but also it is more kind of common and widespread for people to work from home. So in other words, the office-based work, obviously still there, don't get me wrong, but you will find now many people are now working from home. And I've seen this in the UK, especially since after COVID. The number of people going into i'tikaf has now increased. So even in our madrasa, Dhuhr Prayers, we also do i'tikaf as well. And last year we had 40 people sitting in i'tikaf. And we don't consider ourselves to be like a big masjid. And then there were other masjids nearby, they were having like 50 to 60 people. They could have actually had more if it wasn't for space that they had to tell some people, turn some people away. Point being is that there's now been, mashallah, a very good increase of a number of people now wanting to do i'tikaf. But I'm not sure whether that is the case here. I'm sure some people would like to do i'tikaf, but because of other restrictions they can't. So what I want to do is just explain a few things about i'tikaf, different categories of i'tikaf, and Inshā'Allāh encourage everyone, especially the youngsters who we have here, is at least make the intention of i'tikaf. Because look, there are three categories of i'tikaf. I'm not going to go over the first category, but I'll mention the last two. One is called the Sunnat Mu'akkada i'tikaf. Well, to be precise, Sunnat Mu'akkada al-Kifaya, which means that at least one member from that community has to, well, it's Sunnat Mu'akkada, for him to do i'tikaf in that masjid. Otherwise, the entire community are going to be sinful for leaving out to emphasize sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is sunnat muakkada, and you do that in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Now besides that, there's another category which I said every one of us can do, which is a nafal i'tikaf. And nafal i'tikaf, optional i'tikaf, is so flexible. What that means is, the moment you come in the masjid, just make the intention of i'tikaf. You brothers are here listening to this lecture. If we all make the intention, we could actually do it now as well. Make the intention in your heart that you are making the intention of optional i'tikaf, you'll get the reward. But more so in the last 10 days of Ramadan, what you can do, brothers, is that if you got full-time work, you can't dedicate some time to do the full 10 days, you can easily come as soon as work finishes, stay all the way until Fajr, make the intention of nafal i'tikaf, and then when it's time to go for work, go for work. And a lot of people do this as well, that perhaps they can't do the full 10 days sunnat muakkada where they are inside the masjid, but what they will do is, they'll go out to work, and then they'll come to the masjid. So rather than going home, as soon as they finish work at 4, 5 in the evening, then they'll come to the masjid, stay there, stay for iftar, do their ibadat, do the suhoor, do the fajr, have a few hours to sleep, and then go work 9, 10 in the morning. That is nafal i'tikaf. And that is, as I said, anyone can do that. Even the youngsters we have here. If you got school, fair enough, you can't do it now, but especially last 10 days of Ramadan, especially on the weekend, where there's no school. So come early, make the intention nafal i'tikaf, do ibadah, do worship. Yes, if you get a bit tired in the middle, and need a few minutes to kind of like refresh yourself and get some fresh air, because you're doing optional i'tikaf, so you could walk out of the masjid, go out, get a few minutes of fresh air, and then come back. But the benefit is that every second you are spending inside the masjid, you're getting reward for that. So that is the nafal i'tikaf and the sunnat muakkada i'tikaf, as I already told you. And remember, this nafal i'tikaf is not only for men but also for women as well. women can also do i'tikaf. Now again, women, what they should do in the last 10 days of Ramadan is designate a place in their house, which tends to be their bedroom, as their place of i'tikaf. So even the sisters who may say, oh, I want to do i'tikaf, but I got all these household chores, I have to pick up the children from school, drop them off. Okay, you could do all those chores, but then as soon as you're done with that, as soon as you've done the cooking, and you've got nothing else to do, go upstairs, go to your bedroom, and then make the intention of nafil i'tikaf, and that will be your i'tikaf. And i'tikaf is such a great reward. It's mentioned in the hadith of Mishkat al-Masabih that i'tikaf, you get the same reward as fasting during the day and doing qiyamul layl in the night. Meaning, because i'tikaf is an ibadah. So when you are in the masjid and you made the intention of i'tikaf, without doing anything, you're already getting thawab and reward. So if you made the intention of i'tikaf now, you're sitting here, you're getting reward. Even though you haven't actually stood up to pray, just by sitting in the masjid, you're getting reward for that. So i'tikaf is, you get huge rewards. So always try at least, if you can't do the full 10 days, make the effort at least, 3 days, nafil i'tikaf, 24 hours. The youngsters we have here, at least spend some, hours in the masjid. And it is the best place to be in the masjid, especially last 10 days of Ramadan, and reconnect yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because remember, brothers and sisters, we use the month of Ramadan to achieve taqwa. We're using the month of Ramadan to gain nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you cannot gain nearness to Allah without being in the most beloved of His places. Ahabbul bilad ilallahi masajiduha. You cannot attain closeness by being at home. You cannot gain closeness to Allah by being in a haram place. It's only when you are in the masjid, that's where you will gain the nearness and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So look, the first Ashara, first 10 days more or less have already passed. Next thing you know, it's going to be another 10 days will go, and then within the last 10 days of Ramadan. So Inshā'Allāh, let's utilize the month of Ramadan properly. Make sure that we do our ibadat, our worship properly. Inshā'Allāh, we spend time in the masjid, and more importantly, spend time with the right people. There's some youngsters here, very important for yourselves, that hang around with good people. Yeah, the good people, they're like perfume sellers. You know that hadith? They're like perfume sellers. So they'll always bring you towards good. Bad people, they're like the furnace burners. They'll always will burn you. They'll always will hurt you. So true friends, good friends, are the ones who are always will be there for you, and will encourage you, will help you, will kind of be a role model for you. You'll be inspired by them. So Inshā'Allāh, do use this month of Ramadan to be with the local imams, with the Imam Sahib, with the shuyukh who are here, and Inshā'Allāh, in that particular way, you're able to benefit yourself and also the Muslim Ummah as well. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts our efforts, our good deeds in this blessed month of Ramadan. Once again, I'd like to thank the host, the masjid, Sheikh Yusuf, Sheikh Altaf, for arranging this particular program. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them all tawfiq. Jazakallah khair for listening. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh, for the very beneficial talk, inshallah. So for the next 30 minutes, inshallah, we'll have a Q&A sort of panel thing with both the shuyukh, if we'd like to come, inshallah. And everyone can just ask their questions and they can answer, inshallah. Also, if you guys could specify who your question is directed towards, that would also be helpful.
Inshallah. Any questions? Any? It doesn't have to be about fasting per se, it could be about anything, Inshā'Allāh. About business, about mortgages. We had a few yesterday, Krishna.
Yes.
University.
I have a question for both of you. If someone is not medically able to fast during the month of Ramadan, I believe the rule is that they have to feed somebody make up for those days. What if they're financially not able to feed, let's say they have constrained or they're not able to do that, and what is the rule for that particular person?
Sure.
Go ahead. You have the mic.
Okay, Bismillah. Actually, a very good question. Never thought of what the alternative will be. Yep. They will give the fidya. It's forgiven, yeah. So if they can't afford, obviously the fidya amount normally tends to be the sadaqah fitr. So I'm not sure how much sadaqah fitr is here. $10, I'm assuming.
$10.
So $10. So again, it doesn't exactly have to be $10. It's actually based on a kilogram of wheat, which may be a bit cheaper than $10. So just say for argument's sake, it works out to be like $2. So they can actually give, say, $60. I'm just giving a hypothetical estimation. So you can actually be cheaper than what is the normal sadaqah fitr amount. So if they can afford $50, $60, then they should give that amount. But if they are really poor and don't have anything at all, then it will be cancelled.
Any other questions?
Sheikh Tosir was mentioning in the beginning of his lecture about like when you like the goal essentially is to like understand the deen and whatnot. So I was gonna ask you like what are the steps in order to what steps do you take in order to get to understanding the deen?
What are these steps? Again, a very good question. I think the first thing to mention is that remember acquiring ilm and knowledge, it's not a sprint but a marathon. So it's like a journey. So one thing I'll say is that as long as you are learning something every single day, so even though it may be something little, but you are learning something, and more importantly you're trying to like put into practice what you learned. So as long as you're doing that, and obviously you're learning with scholars who are reliable, who are obviously like the best out there. So as long as you're doing that and it is being done consistently, not like once in a blue moon, and you then start seeing the changes. So when you then start seeing the changes in terms of your actions, your good deeds, then you'll see that you'll be able to kind of like understand more of your deen, and you'll then want to learn more and Inshā'Allāh become more better individual.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just to add on that, the intention should never be to show people or to feel elevated over others or to debate and argue with others or put down others. The intent, as Mufti Sahib pointed out, is that you want to reform yourself with that knowledge. You want to advance your knowledge to understand and to transform yourself and make yourself better and to apply it in your circumstance and your situation. And for this, you stay in the company of ulama, of scholars, of learned, reliable scholars, learn from them, enroll in their courses, in their institutions, etc. And Inshā'Allāh, this will be a means to, increase and get to that objective of deeper understanding.
During Ramadan, when you're traveling and decide to fast, can you still shorten and combine your prayer, or do you still need to, if you decide to fast, do you need to be on the right time of Asar or Dhuhr and Asar? Can you combine it, or do you need to pray on time? What will you travel?
So, again, as I said, in the Hanafi madhab, And even just putting that to a side for a second, Allah says quite clearly in the Quran, Inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta, which means that prayers need to be prayed at its prescribed time. So Fajr has its own unique features when it is prayed during Fajr time. Likewise for Dhuhr, likewise for Asr, Maghrib and Isha. And these prayer times is mentioned in hadith of Bukhari as well as Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, about once Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam descended and he showed or he led Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the individual prayers at its prescribed time. And he said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that this is also the time, هَذَا وَقْتُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ قَبْلَهُ. This is also the prayer times of the prophets before you. So the point I'm trying to make is, first and foremost, is that prayers should be prayed at its prescribed time. Now, yes, we understand that we sometimes may be traveling, work. Somebody asked this question recently as well, that maybe one of those like truck drivers, where I'm sure you're probably traveling state to state. So look, in that situation, there are ways around it. And one of the ways which, like our Hanafi madhab says, is that you do something which looks like you are combining, but in reality you are not combining. So what I mean by that is, if Asr prayer was to start at 5 p.m, so you delay your Dhuhr all the way until 4:55, say 4:55, because you're traveling, you're praying 2 rakats anyway, so it takes 2 minutes, 3 minutes, say. So you pray your Dhuhr at 4:55. By the time you finish your Dhuhr, it will be 5 o'clock. Asr time has kicked in. Then Allah Akbar, then pray 2 rakats Asr. So, because the reason why people want to combine is they want to make the least stops. Like one of the reasons why you want to combine is obviously because you're on a journey, you're not going to be able to stop often. So you just want to stop once and pray 2 prayers at the same time. That in essence is what the goal of combining is. So rather than doing that and praying Asr in the Dhuhr time, the more acceptable way around it is delay Dhuhr, stop at 4:55, and especially nowadays when you have your own car, your own truck, and there's all these like, what do you call them, gas stations? Service stations, we call them in UK, call them here as well, yeah. So you could easily stop over and you could easily pray. Yes, if you're on a flight, but even alhamdulillah with flight, there's ways around it and so on. So I think that would be more better thing to do rather than just combine it, because then you're going to lose that beauty of praying Salah at its prescribed time. Sure.
Yeah, so where are you from, brother, if I may ask?
I'm from Philippines.
Philippines. So they follow the Shafi'i fiqh, usually, in the Philippines.
I'm a convert.
Oh, you're a convert, okay. Okay.
I mostly practice here in Canada.
Okay, mashallah, yeah. Yeah, so those who generally follow the fiqh of the Jamhur, they actually join the prayers together. So this is the best method that Mufti just explained to us. So you pray each prayer in a specific timing. However, you delay the first one up to just before the timing of the next one. And that way you're joining the prayers. And then the other method is to perform both in one prayer timing. So to answer your question, when you're fasting and you're in journey, yes, you could join the prayers. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
When you're sick during Ramadan and like mucus, like if you swallow your mucus, does that invalidate your fast?
No, that does not invalidate the fast. The brother's asking that your mucus, you end up swallowing it. It doesn't invalidate the fast. What the scholars have written is that if you deliberately keep doing this, it's makruh, it's disliked, but it doesn't invalidate the fast. Any other questions? Okay, yeah, question.
Mostly in the Western, especially in what I know is in Canada, most of the time, I know what is the mortgage or the riba is haram. However, sometimes it will say, some people say, if you buy one house, that is not sometimes affect us if the landlord will bother you or make trouble. So if you buy and pay the bank, that will be good. Some people say. So I don't know from where they get that one.
So the question is about mortgage-based, riba-based purchase of a home. So we know already that the Quran is very clear. Ahallallahu al-bay'a wa harrama al-riba. Allah has made business and trade permitted, halal, and riba is forbidden. So based on this verse, it's very clear that the riba is not allowed. Now, there are options for Muslims. If they can't afford to buy a house and they don't want to get into the haram mortgage, there are Islamic financing organizations and banks. They provide Islamically acceptable services of halal mortgage. So you should opt for that instead of going to the bank to get a riba-based mortgage. Right? Yes, I am aware that there are some organizations, for example, the European Fiqh Council, they've given this permission that you're saying, that buying one house on riba, not for business, not for investment, but one to live in, especially if you're in a difficult circumstance, then it's allowed. So if someone is in this type of dire need and necessity and situation, then that might be a flexibility. But after you've exhausted all other options, I would say. So you're unable to borrow money from friends and family, you're unable to meet the requirements of the Islamic financing organizations, your rent is far more than what would your mortgage be. So then in that situation, then it might be a darura, it might be a dire necessity, and it might be permissible. But in essence, we want to use that as a very last and final resource, not the first option. Any other questions? Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khairan to the Shayukh for coming out and giving us these beneficial talks, Inshā'Allāh. If you guys can meet with them as well on the way out, that would be highly appreciated. Assalamu Alaikum wa Rahmatullāhi.
Assalām-u Alaikum.
Free till 6. I said I guess we're free till 6.
I'll take the transmitter. Oh, you have a transmitter too?
Yes. Your angle is much better.
You could have set up besides. No problem.